Have you ever heard of someone going to bed in completely normal condition, but never waking up the next morning? That was the case of Mr. Walter, 76 years old, from Florida. That evening, he smiled as usual, said goodnight just like every other day. Yet only a few hours later, his heart fell silent, leaving behind an unspeakable grief for his family. No symptoms, no warnings. Just a small nightly habit he had repeated for years, one that seemed harmless. If you are over 60, or if you are caring for your parents or grandparents, then this story speaks directly to you. Because right now, you too may be keeping that same habit without realizing it is silently challenging your heart. So what exactly is that habit, and why does it have the power to steal a life in just one night? Let me tell you right now.
The habit of drinking water before bed, a dangerous misunderstanding. Perhaps you've heard a popular piece of advice shared everywhere. Drink a glass of water before going to sleep to prevent a heart attack. Sounds simple and easy, doesn't it? Many even believe that by keeping this habit, they'll sleep more safely. But the truth is completely different. And sometimes, what seems harmless can actually become the very reason your heart struggles all night long. Let me tell you about Mr. Martin, 67 years old, living in Minnesota. A retired carpenter, still healthy, still walking around the lake every morning. He often prided himself on being stronger than many of his peers. But he had one small nuisance. Every night, he would wake up 2-3 times to go to the bathroom. He thought, it's just part of getting older. His wife grew used to hearing him shuffle in and out of the bathroom at night. But then one March morning, she tried to wake him for breakfast, and he did not respond. Doctors concluded he had died in his sleep, his heart stopping around 4 a.m. You see, there were no clear warning signs beforehand. Just those nighttime awakenings that seemed harmless, but in reality, they became the hidden chain that gradually weakened his heart. And this was not an isolated case. Thousands of families in America have faced the same sudden loss, all linked to this seemingly small habit. So why is waking up to urinate at night so dangerous? Biologically, when you are asleep, your body enters a recovery state. Blood pressure drops, heart rate slows, and stress hormones reach their lowest levels. But when you have to wake up in the middle of the night, especially multiple times, the nervous system is reactivated. Cortisol, the stress hormone, begins to surge. Instead of resting, your heart is forced to speed up, right when it most needs calm and recovery. Both the Cleveland Clinic and Harvard Health emphasize that there is no evidence proving that drinking water before bed helps prevent heart attacks. On the contrary, drinking too much water late in the evening only forces the bladder to work harder, making you wake up, and unintentionally disrupting the heart's critical nightly recovery cycle. I know that for many older adults, nighttime thirst can be real, and that's not wrong. But experts recommend, if you are thirsty, take just a small sip. More importantly, make sure you drink enough water from morning until late afternoon, so your body doesn't need to make up for it at night. Because it's that very nighttime compensation that causes cardiovascular problems. You might be wondering, but I've had this habit for years. Could it really be harmful? The truth is, the danger lies in accumulation. A few nights of disrupted sleep may not matter, but if repeated for months and years, your heart gradually loses the rest it desperately needs. And in one fragile moment, often around 3-4 a.m., the very window when statistics show most heart attacks occur, that accumulated strain can erupt into tragedy. Does this remind you of nights when you woke up 2 or 3 times, returned to bed but struggled to fall asleep again? Did you ever think that was just a normal part of aging? If so, perhaps it's time to look at it differently, because those very sleepless nights may be silently challenging your heart. But what about people who don't drink water at night, yet still suffer from insomnia or frequent awakenings? Could there be other hidden factors in the dark, quietly undermining the heart while few ever realize it? We will uncover them in the next section.
2. Interrupted sleep and cardiovascular risk. Have you ever told yourself, it's just a little insomnia, it probably doesn't matter? In reality, science shows the opposite. Each time you lose deep sleep, your heart shoulders an extra burden. And if this repeats night after night, the consequences may be far more serious than you think. A major Harvard study in 2021 followed more than 72,000 people over many years. The results shocked doctors. Those who went to bed and woke up at irregular times, even if they still slept the same total hours, had a 26% higher risk of heart attack, stroke, or heart failure compared to people with consistent sleep schedules. In other words, simply changing your bedtime, 9 p.m. one night, 11 p.m. the next, is enough to put extra strain on your heart. Not only that, another study found that people who sleep less than 6 hours per night have about a 20% higher risk of heart disease. Short sleep doesn't just make you tired the next morning, it also keeps blood pressure and stress hormones elevated throughout the night. The body doesn't have time to repair itself, the heart doesn't get to rest, and this vicious cycle repeats over and over. Imagine this. During the day, your heart works nonstop, pumping blood, managing blood pressure, dealing with stress and diet. Nighttime should be when it rests. But if your sleep is fragmented, your heart is like a machine forced to work overtime, never turned off. How long do you think it can endure? I remember a 72-year-old patient who confided, "Doctor, I always thought insomnia was just a normal part of aging. I never realized it was harming my heart." After undergoing nighttime blood pressure monitoring, she discovered her pressure wasn't dropping as it should. In fact, it was rising around 2 a.m. This explained why she often woke up with palpitations and a racing heart. Only then did she realize insomnia wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a warning signal. And I know many of you watching this video may have thought the same. Have you had nights of tossing and turning, waking up repeatedly, only to feel exhausted the next morning? How many times did you brush it off, telling yourself, "It's just because I'm getting older"? But the truth is, interrupted sleep doesn't just make you tired, it keeps your heart on high alert. The more nights this happens, the greater the chance of a heart attack in the early morning hours. The key point here is, you don't have to accept this as an inevitable part of aging. There are specific causes behind fragmented sleep, and many of them come from nightly habits you can change. So beyond drinking water, what else in the dark might be silently exhausting your heart? Could it be light, noise, or even your own breathing at night that is adding to the risk? Let's uncover this in the next section.
3. The hidden enemies in the night. When it comes to nighttime cardiovascular risks, many people only think about drinking water before bed or insomnia. But there are other hidden enemies quietly creeping into your sleep, forcing your heart to work harder instead of resting. One of them is nighttime light. You may think leaving a dim night lamp on makes it safer when you need to use the bathroom, or perhaps it's just a lifelong habit. But a Harvard study in 2022 found that people who sleep in environments with light, even faint light, have higher risks of obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. These three conditions form the dangerous triangle that weakens the heart. So, do you still believe that little night lights are harmless? Another overlooked culprit is something called reverse dipping, when blood pressure doesn't drop at night as it should, but instead stays the same or even rises. Your heart should be resting, yet it continues pumping under pressure. This has been proven to directly increase the risk of stroke and heart failure. Have you ever measured your blood pressure in the morning and been surprised that it was higher than the night before? You may unknowingly be among the group of reverse dippers. And then there's a familiar name few recognize for its true danger: sleep apnea. This condition causes the airway to close during sleep, lowering oxygen in the blood and forcing the heart to beat faster to compensate. People with sleep apnea often snore loudly, wake frequently at night, and feel sleepy during the day. Research from the Mayo Clinic confirms that sleep apnea is one of the strongest predictors of sudden cardiac death. Have you ever noticed yourself or a loved one snoring so loudly that the whole house could hear it? Another problem many older adults face is acid reflux. When you lie down, stomach acid easily flows back into the esophagus, causing burning, nausea, or nighttime awakenings. But what few people realize is that reflux also stimulates the nervous system, making the heart beat faster. If this happens night after night, it becomes a heavy burden on the cardiovascular system. You see, the enemies of the heart are not always obvious. Sometimes it's just a small light in the room, a snore you consider normal, or a burning sensation you brush aside. Yet all of these small factors combined can push your heart into danger at the very moment you think you are safest, while you sleep. So, have you ever wondered, why is it that with the same nightly habits, some people stay healthy while others suffer tragedy? Could there be a simple yet powerful way to protect the heart throughout the night? Stay with me, because in the next section, I'll share practical, easy-to-apply solutions you can start tonight. Solutions that may completely transform your heart health.
4. Nighttime solutions to protect the heart. After hearing these stories and scientific findings, you may be asking yourself, so what should I do to make sure sleep is no longer a trap for my heart? The good news is you can take control of this starting tonight with just a few small changes. First, remember that water is still essential for the body, but timing is the key. Cleveland Clinic recommends drinking regularly from morning until late afternoon when your body is active and needs hydration. But after 8 p.m., you should limit your intake. If you're thirsty, just take a small sip. And always make sure to empty your bladder before bed to lower the chance of waking up in the middle of the night. Have you ever counted how many times you go back and forth to the bathroom in one night? Second, pay attention to your bedtime. Research from Harvard shows that people who consistently go to bed between 10 and 11 p.m. have a significantly lower risk of heart disease than those who sleep before 10 or after midnight. This doesn't mean you must force yourself into a rigid schedule like a clock, but creating a steady rhythm helps reduce cardiovascular strain noticeably. So, what time do you usually go to bed? And does it fluctuate a lot? Third, focus on your sleep environment. Your bedroom should be dark, quiet, and well-ventilated. A 2022 Harvard study showed that even a small amount of nighttime light can raise the risk of cardiovascular problems. Try turning off nightlights completely or use curtains to block outside light. If you snore loudly or wake up short of breath, don't hesitate to get checked for sleep apnea. Sometimes simply wearing a CPAP machine at night can protect your heart from dangerous arrhythmias. And finally, avoid the stimulants you can control: salt, caffeine, and alcohol. Experts at Mayo Clinic emphasize that consuming these after 7 p.m. forces the heart to work harder instead of resting. A light dinner, low in salt, with no stimulating drinks, is truly a gift you can give your heart before sleep. You see, protecting your heart at night doesn't always require drastic measures like surgery or expensive medications. It starts with something as simple as when you drink water, what time you go to bed, and how you set up your sleep environment. These small changes, if maintained consistently, can build into a solid shield for your heart. But perhaps the biggest question many people still wonder is, can just a few small habit changes really prevent silent heart attacks? To answer that, let's return to Mr. Walter's story and draw the final lesson for all of us. Do you remember the story of Mr. Walter? One evening seemed perfectly ordinary, with no warning signs at all, yet because of one small bedtime habit, he never woke up again. Mr. Walter was not the only case. Thousands of families in the United States have faced the same heartbreaking loss simply because they trusted a habit that seemed harmless. Now, after hearing the research from Harvard, Mayo Clinic, and Cleveland Clinic, and after listening to these real-life stories, do you still believe that just a glass of water or a tiny nightlight is truly harmless? The truth is, your heart needs deep and quiet sleep more than anything else, and only you can give it that through small, consistent changes starting tonight. You may have thought that insomnia, Nighttime urination or occasional reflux were just part of aging, but now you know they can be the small bricks that eventually build into a heart attack at 3 or 4 in the morning. And if we recognize them early, we can absolutely make a change. Ask yourself, how many times have you lost sleep this week? What messages is your body quietly sending you? And if you share your story, could someone out there recognize the warning in time and protect their heart before it's too late? Don't let your heart speak through a sudden, painful attack. Start today by drinking water at the right time, going to bed at the right hour, and letting the night truly be